"Touch me and you will know my secret," whispered the Apache woman to the cowboy. The sun was just beginning to rise over the jagged peaks of the Arizona territory, painting the desert with warm, golden light. A lone cowboy rode slowly through the narrow canyon, the sound of his horse's hooves echoing against the rock walls. Dust clung to his worn boots and the edges of his coat, and his hat shaded his eyes, which scanned the horizon carefully. His name was Jake Miller, a man of quiet resolve, used to the loneliness of the open land. He had been tracking a small herd of cattle that had wandered off, and the trail had led him far from the safety of the town. The wind whispered through the rocks, carrying with it a faint, unfamiliar scent of wild herbs and distant fires. As Jake rode deeper into the canyon, he noticed something unusual. Near a small spring, the kind that seemed hidden from the world, stood a figure he had never seen before. She was a woman, dressed in simple, flowing garments that blended with the earth tones of the desert. Her hair, dark and long, framed a face both strong and delicate, and her eyes held a quiet intensity. She moved gracefully, gathering herbs and placing them carefully into a woven basket. There was something in the way she carried herself, an ease and connection with the land, that made Jake slow his horse and watch. The woman, sensing his presence, turned slightly but did not flee. She watched him as if trying to measure his intentions. There was caution in her stance, yet no fear. Her gaze was steady, almost as if she could see beyond the surface, reading his thoughts. Jake felt a strange mix of curiosity and respect. He had heard stories of Apache women who were wise and skilled, women who knew the desert better than any map could show. But he had never imagined meeting one in such an isolated place. He nudged his horse forward slowly, careful not to startle her. "Good morning," he said, keeping his voice soft. "I didn't mean to intrude." The woman nodded slightly, acknowledging his presence but saying nothing. There was a silence that hung between them, not uncomfortable but heavy with unspoken questions. Jake could feel the tension of the moment, the sense that this meeting was not random. The desert seemed to hold its breath, waiting. Finally, the woman spoke, her voice low and smooth. "You should be careful here," she said. "The land has eyes and it sees more than you think." Jake tipped his hat slightly, intrigued. "I'm just passing through," he replied. "I didn't mean any harm." Her eyes softened, but she did not move closer. Instead, she gestured to the herbs she had collected. "These plants can heal if you know how to use them," she said. "They can also protect. Knowledge has its own power." Jake felt a chill, not from fear but from the weight of her words. He had spent much of his life on the frontier, but never had someone spoken to him in a way that suggested so much depth hidden beneath simple words. He shifted in the saddle, trying to appear casual, but inside, a sense of wonder grew. There was a mystery about her, something he could not yet grasp. After a moment, she spoke again, almost in a whisper, and it made him lean closer, straining to hear. "Touch me," she said. "And you will know my secret." Jake blinked. He had expected warnings or riddles, but never this. The words were both a challenge and an invitation, and they stirred something deep within him. He wanted to ask what she meant, but the respect he felt for her for this moment held his tongue. The desert around them seemed to grow still, as if waiting for his answer. He stayed quiet, letting her words sink in. The woman did not approach him, but she did not retreat either. She continued to move gracefully among the herbs, her hands gentle yet purposeful. Jake noticed how carefully she treated each plant, how her fingers brushed the leaves without damaging them. There was reverence in her actions, and he realized that this was more than simple gathering. It was a ritual, a dance of understanding between her and the land. Hours passed, though time in the desert is hard to measure. Jake dismounted and led his horse closer to the spring, keeping a respectful distance. The woman watched, but she did not seem threatened. Instead, she seemed to observe him, as if testing whether he belonged here, whether he could understand even a fraction of what the desert and its secrets demanded. "Why would you say that?" he asked finally, his voice low. "Why offer a secret to someone you do not know?" She paused, looking at him with an intensity that made his heart race. "Because some truths cannot be spoken," she said. "Some things must be felt, understood, not heard. A touch can carry what words cannot." Jake swallowed. He had never encountered such a perspective. In the towns he frequented, people measured everything in coins, agreements, or promises. Here, in this wild place, the rules were different. The rules were older, shaped by wind, stone, and the lives of those who had come before. He felt humbled, aware of how little he knew. As the sun climbed higher, she stood and turned her gaze to the canyon walls. Her eyes followed the curves and shadows as if reading them, deciphering stories only the land could tell. Jake noticed the wind tugging at her hair and clothes, yet she did not falter. There was strength in her stillness, a quiet power that demanded respect. He wanted to speak again to ask more questions, but something told him that doing so might break the fragile trust forming between them. Instead, he simply watched. He began to understand that this encounter was about patience, observation, and presence. Not every secret was meant to be grasped immediately, and not every question needed an answer right away. As the morning faded into afternoon, Jake finally settled down near the edge of the spring. He removed his hat and wiped the sweat from his forehead, allowing himself to breathe. The woman continued her work, and occasionally she would glance at him, acknowledging his presence without a word. There was a rhythm to their shared silence, a silent understanding that they were both observers and participants in something larger than themselves. By the time the sun began to dip toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the canyon, Jake felt a shift within him. He realized that this moment, this meeting, was more than a coincidence. The desert had brought them together for a reason. He did not yet understand it fully, but he sensed that his life was about to change in ways he could not predict. As he prepared to mount his horse and continue his journey, the woman approached, her movements fluid and confident. She stopped a few feet away, close enough for him to feel her presence but still maintaining a respectful distance. Her eyes met his, and in that look, Jake felt a mixture of warning, invitation, and quiet amusement. "Tomorrow," she said softly, "if you return, perhaps you will be ready to understand more, but not today. Today is only the beginning." Jake nodded, unsure what he had agreed to, yet feeling compelled to return. He swung onto his horse, giving her a final, respectful nod. As he rode away, the canyon seemed to stretch endlessly before him, the walls alive with color and shadow. He could still feel the echo of her words, whispering in his mind, "Touch me and you will know my secret." The ride back to the main trail was slow. Jake kept thinking about the woman, her movements, her words, and the quiet wisdom in her eyes. He realized that the desert had taught him patience, observation, and respect, lessons that no book or teacher could offer. For the first time in his life, he felt that he was part of something much larger than himself, a story that had been unfolding long before he arrived and would continue long after he left. By the time he reached the outskirts of the town, the sky was streaked with purple and orange. The town looked small and ordinary compared to the vastness of the canyons, the secrets hidden in the land, and the woman who waited there. Jake knew he would return. He did not know how or when or what he would find, but he felt an unshakable certainty that their paths were intertwined. That night, as he lay under the canvas of his tent, the memory of her eyes and the whisper of her words played in his mind. He drifted to sleep thinking of the desert, the spring, and the mysterious woman who had opened a door to a world he had never known existed. He felt a quiet anticipation, a readiness for the journey ahead, knowing that some secrets were worth waiting for, and that some encounters could change a person forever. And somewhere in the canyon, under the fading light of day, the woman gathered her herbs and watched the horizon, knowing that the cowboy would return. She whispered softly to the wind, a secret meant only for those who dared to understand. Tomorrow, he will learn the beginning of what must be known. The next morning, the sun rose slowly over the rugged peaks, casting long, golden rays across the canyon walls. Jake Miller woke early, the memory of the Apache woman's words still lingering in his mind. "Touch me and you will know my secret." He felt a mixture of curiosity and caution. The night had been restless. Dreams of the desert, of her eyes, and the whispering wind had filled his sleep. Every shadow in the camp seemed to carry a question he could not answer. Yet he knew deep inside that he had to return to the hidden spring. The ride back through the canyon was quiet. Jake's horse trotted carefully along the narrow trail, kicking up small clouds of dust that shimmered in the morning light. The canyon walls rose like ancient guardians on either side, their jagged shapes carved by centuries of wind and rain. The desert felt alive, as though it were aware of his journey and silently guiding him toward what he sought. When he arrived at the spring, he spotted her immediately. Nakamis, the Apache woman, was kneeling by the water, her hands submerged as she gathered herbs with care and precision. She wore the same flowing garments that had blended so well with the desert yesterday. Her hair, long and dark, moved slightly in the breeze, and her eyes met his the moment he arrived. For a heartbeat, they simply stared at each other. No words were spoken, but an understanding passed between them. Jake dismounted and approached slowly, keeping his hands visible to show he meant no harm. "Good morning," he said softly. "I came back like you said." She nodded slightly, her lips curving into the faintest hint of a smile. "I knew you would," she replied. Her voice was calm, yet it carried a weight that made him listen closely. "Not many would return. The land tests those who walk here." Jake looked around the canyon, noticing how the sunlight danced across the rocks and water. "I've never seen anything like this," he admitted. "It feels different here, alive somehow." Nakamis rose slowly, standing with grace and ease. "Because it is alive," she said. "This land remembers. It remembers those who walked here before us. It holds their stories, their struggles, their joys. And it teaches those who are willing to learn." Her words made Jake feel a shiver run down his spine. He realized that this was no ordinary woman he had met, and no ordinary desert he had entered. There was knowledge here that had been preserved for generations, and he had only just begun to glimpse it. "I want to learn," Jake said, his voice steady. "But I don't know how, I don't know where to begin." Nakamis studied him carefully, her dark eyes searching for honesty in his expression. After a long pause, she spoke. "Learning is not a simple thing. You must listen, you must watch, you must feel. Secrets are not taken, they are earned. Some come from touch, some from patience, some from understanding." She gestured toward the spring. "Sit, watch, learn." Jake followed her instructions, sitting a few feet away. He observed her carefully as she began her morning rituals. She washed the herbs in the spring, humming a soft tune that blended with the rustling wind. Each movement seemed deliberate, precise, and meaningful. He noticed how she inspected every leaf, every stem, as though each held a story waiting to be told. Hours passed as he watched, and the quiet rhythm of her actions began to feel familiar, almost comforting. Nakamis occasionally glanced at him, acknowledging his presence but never demanding attention. Jake found himself slowly learning to read her movements, to sense the patterns in the way she worked with the plants, the water, and even the wind. At one point, she paused and picked up a small bundle of herbs. She held them gently in her hands and looked at him. "These herbs can heal wounds," she said. "Some can ease pain, some can calm the mind, but only if used correctly. Misuse can harm as easily as help." Jake leaned forward, fascinated. "How do you know all this?" She smiled faintly, her eyes reflecting both pride and sadness. "I was taught. My people passed this knowledge down through generations. It is our way of surviving, of respecting the land, of respecting life itself. Not everyone understands. Not everyone is ready." Jake nodded, absorbing her words. He felt a growing respect for her and for the knowledge she carried. He realized that her secret was more than just a personal mystery. It was a connection to something far greater, the wisdom of her ancestors, the strength of her people, and the harmony of the natural world. As the day moved toward noon, the sun rose higher, making the rocks glow like fire. Jake felt the heat on his face and arms, yet he stayed, captivated by the way Nakamis moved through the world. He noticed her hands, strong and skillful, moving with intention. Each touch, each motion seemed to carry a lesson, even if he did not yet understand it fully. Finally, she paused and looked directly at him. "You are patient," she said. "Most men would not wait this long, would not watch without interference. That is the first lesson. Patience is the key to understanding." Jake felt a sense of pride, but also humility. He had come seeking a secret, yet he realized that the first step was not to take, but to observe, to listen, and to respect. He nodded silently, understanding that this was the beginning of something much larger than he had imagined. After a while, she motioned for him to approach. His heart raced as he stepped closer, but he remembered her words, "Touch me and you will know my secret." He hesitated, unsure if he was truly ready. Nakamis extended her hand slightly, not forcing him but inviting him. Jake reached out, and the moment his fingers brushed hers, a strange sensation filled him. It was as if the desert itself had flowed into him, visions of windswept canyons, flowing water, and the lives of those who had walked this land before him. He saw hunters, gatherers, children playing, and elders teaching. He felt joy, sorrow, triumph, and loss, all connected by the same thread of life that ran through the desert. He stumbled back slightly, overwhelmed by the intensity of what he had experienced. Nakamis held his gaze, calm and patient. "Do not be afraid," she said. "You have touched only the beginning. There is much more to learn and much more to understand." Jake swallowed hard, trying to steady himself. I don't know what I just saw," he admitted. "It felt like I was everywhere, seeing everything." She nodded. "That is the power of connection. Touch is more than physical. It carries understanding, history, and life. But it also carries responsibility. You cannot share this lightly. Not everyone can understand what it truly means." For the rest of the afternoon, they continued in quiet companionship. Nakamis taught him how to recognize different herbs, how to listen to the wind, and how to feel the subtle shifts in the land. Jake learned to pay attention, to slow down, and to trust his senses in a way he never had before. Each lesson was small, yet each was profound, slowly building a foundation for something greater. By evening, the sun began to set, casting the canyon in deep orange and purple hues. Jake felt exhausted but exhilarated. He had come seeking a secret, and he had begun to uncover a world far larger and more beautiful than he had ever imagined. Nakamis watched him quietly, her expression unreadable, but there was a hint of satisfaction in her eyes. "Tomorrow," she said softly, "we will continue. You are learning well, but this is only the beginning. The desert has many stories, and each one is a key to understanding more. You must be ready to listen, to observe, and to respect. Only then will the full secret reveal itself." Jake nodded, feeling a mixture of anticipation and reverence. He mounted his horse and rode back toward the trail, the shadows of the canyon stretching behind him. The air was cooler now, and the quiet hum of insects and distant birds filled the canyon with life. As he rode, he reflected on the day. The lessons learned, the visions glimpsed, and the growing awareness that this encounter would change him forever. That night, as he camped under the stars, he thought again of Nakamis, of her words, and of the strange, beautiful connection he had felt with the desert. He realized that her secret was not just about herbs or visions. It was about understanding, patience, trust, and respect. It was about seeing the world in a way he never had before, and it was something he would carry with him always. As he drifted into sleep, he felt a quiet certainty that tomorrow the journey would continue, and that each step would bring him closer to the truth she had whispered in the wind. The desert was alive, Nakamis' secret was alive, and he was finally beginning to understand that some secrets were not to be feared, but to be embraced, one careful step at a time. The next morning, the canyon was bathed in soft light as Jake Miller rode back toward the hidden. Spring. The experience from yesterday had left him restless with anticipation. Every step of his horse seemed to echo with the memory of Nakamis, touch, and the visions it had brought. He was no longer just a curious observer. He wanted to understand, to truly know what she had whispered about the secret of the desert. His heart beat faster as he imagined the lessons that awaited him. When he arrived, Nakamis was already there. She stood beside the spring, examining a cluster of wildflowers, her fingers gently brushing the petals. She looked up as he approached and nodded, her eyes meeting his with a mixture of calm and expectation. "You came," she said softly, her voice carrying the quiet authority of someone who knows the land and herself deeply. Jake dismounted slowly, feeling both nervous and eager. "Yes," he said. "I want to understand more. I'm ready." Nakamis studied him for a long moment, as if measuring his readiness. "Are you ready to see beyond what your eyes can show you?" she asked. Jake nodded firmly, though a part of him trembled. "I think so. I want to learn." She gestured for him to sit by the spring. The water was clear and cool, reflecting the bright morning sky. Nakamis picked up a small bundle of herbs and placed it carefully beside her. "Today, you will learn that knowledge is not only seen but felt. The land, the plants, the air, they carry memories. Touch them, listen to them, and you will begin to understand." Jake watched closely as she began her ritual. She knelt by the water, dipping her hands in gently, then lifting the herbs and inspecting them with care. Each movement seemed deliberate, graceful, and full of meaning. She murmured softly to the plants, almost as if speaking a language only they could understand. Jake tried to mimic her stance, feeling the water on his fingers and the cool wind on his face. It was strange, almost magical, but he felt a growing connection to everything around him. After a few minutes, Nakamis motioned for him to come closer. Hesitant but obedient, Jake stepped forward. She handed him a small leaf. "Close your eyes," she instructed. "Do not think." "Feel," Jake obeyed, placing the leaf gently against his palm. Almost immediately, he felt warmth radiating from it, as if it carried the memory of the sun and the rain that had touched it. Then came the visions, brief flashes at first, then longer sequences. He saw the canyon as it had been long ago. Hunters tracking game, children playing along the riverbank, elders teaching the ways of the land. He felt the joy, the fear, the sorrow, and the laughter of those who had lived there before. It was overwhelming yet breathtakingly beautiful. When he opened his eyes, Nakamis was watching him carefully. "Do you understand?" she asked softly. Jake shook his head, breathless. I can feel it. The lives, the land, everything is connected." "It's more than I ever imagined." Nakamis nodded. "Exactly. The secret is not just in the herbs or in the water or in my words. It is in the connection. Life carries memory, and memory carries life. Those who can feel it are the ones who can protect it, understand it, and pass it on." Jake's mind raced. He had thought the secret might be a trick, a story, or a simple mystery, but now he realized it was far deeper. It was about understanding the world in a way few humans ever did, about listening to the land, respecting its history, and feeling the lives that had shaped it. As the morning passed, Nakamis continued to guide him through small lessons. She showed him how to identify different plants by touch, smell, and even the way their leaves reacted to the wind. She taught him how to sense subtle changes in the earth beneath his feet, where water might flow, where animals might hide, and where danger could approach. Each lesson required patience, observation, and humility. Jake found himself paying attention to details he had once ignored. The scent of sage in the air, the whisper of the wind through narrow canyon walls, the pattern of shadows on the rocks. During a break, they sat by the spring, watching the water ripple in the sunlight. Jake finally found the courage to speak. "How did you learn all this?" he asked. Nakamis smiled faintly. "I was taught by my mother and her mother before her. This knowledge comes from generations who lived with the land, who respected it, who learned to see it not as a resource to take, but as a partner. And one day it is passed to those who are ready to receive it. That is why you are here." Jake felt humbled. He had spent years in the frontier, thinking he understood survival, thinking he had seen the wilderness. But this was a level of understanding he had never imagined. It was not about hunting or riding fast horses. It was about listening, feeling, and becoming part of the world instead of standing apart from it. By mid-afternoon, Nakamis handed him another plant, this one with small, fragrant leaves. "This is for healing," she said. "Some wounds are physical, some are of the heart. Touch, listen, and understand its essence." Jake placed his hand over the plant, and immediately he felt the warmth again, this time more intense. He saw flashes of people in need, hunters with broken legs, children with fever, elders weary from life. He felt their pain, their hope, and their trust in the land. When he opened his eyes, he realized he had begun to grasp what Nakamis had meant. The secret was not just knowledge, it was empathy, connection, and responsibility. As the sun began to dip toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the canyon, Jake and Nakamis prepared to return the herbs to the earth. She carefully placed them back near the spring, murmuring softly. The desert seemed to respond. The wind shifted, carrying the scent of sage and wildflowers, the canyon walls glowing in the fading light. Jake felt a deep sense of peace, as if he had become part of something greater than himself. Nakamis looked at him with a serious expression. "Tomorrow we will continue. You have seen only the beginning. The full secret is not just about the land or the plants. It is about understanding life itself, its cycles, its stories, its lessons. You must be ready to face what you might feel, what you might see, and what you might carry within you." Jake nodded, feeling both anticipation and a quiet fear. He did not fully understand what lay ahead, but he knew he wanted to continue to learn, to be transformed by what she would teach. As he mounted his horse to leave, he glanced back at the spring. Nakamis stood there, watching, her figure bathed in the last rays of the sun. She seemed both part of the land and apart from it, a living bridge between the past and the present. Jake realized that this encounter was shaping him in ways he could not yet comprehend. Riding back toward the town, he reflected on what he had experienced. The visions, the touch, the lessons, it all felt like a dream, yet it was more real than anything he had ever known. He understood that the secret Nakamis held was not a simple trick or story. It was a gift, a responsibility, and a connection to something timeless. That night, under the wide expanse of stars, Jake lay in his camp thinking of the day. He felt a quiet excitement, knowing that tomorrow would bring new lessons, new revelations, and perhaps a deeper understanding of Nakamis' secret. He realized that the desert, the woman, and the land were teaching him to see the world differently, to listen, to feel, and to respect life in ways he had never known. Sleep came slowly, filled with images of the canyon, the spring, and the people he had glimpsed in the visions. He saw hunters, children, elders, and animals, all moving together in harmony, their lives connected by invisible threads. He felt the weight of their stories, and with it, a growing sense of responsibility. Somewhere in the canyon, Nakamis gathered her herbs and watched the fading light. She whispered softly, a promise carried by the wind. Tomorrow, he will understand more. Tomorrow, he will see the secret in a way that will change him forever. Jake did not know what challenges awaited him, what lessons he might face, or how deeply the secret would affect him. But he felt ready, eager to return, and committed to learning what Nakamis had chosen to share. The desert had opened a door, and he was walking through it, step by careful step, toward understanding, wonder, and a truth that had waited for centuries. The morning was quiet when Jake Miller returned to the hidden spring. The canyon seemed unusually still, the air heavier than before. Yesterday had been overwhelming, filled with visions and new understanding, but today something felt different. The wind whispered through the rocks in a sharper tone, and the scent of sage and herbs carried a hint of tension. Jake tightened the straps on his saddle, gripping the reins with steady hands, and rode closer, scanning the canyon for any sign of danger. Nakamis was there, kneeling near the spring, her fingers moving carefully among the herbs. She looked up as he approached, her expression unreadable, serious, and alert. "You came," she said quietly. "Good, today you will learn more, but also be tested." Knowledge and power are not always gentle. There is always a price, a responsibility, and sometimes danger. Jake's heart beat faster. He had felt the pull of her secret, the visions and lessons of the desert, but he had not anticipated danger. "What kind of test?" he asked, though he already felt the answer coming from the air itself, from the land that had eyes and memory. Nakamis motioned for him to dismount and follow her to the edge of the canyon. The narrow path led to a steep ridge overlooking a vast expanse of desert. There in the distance, Jake could see a small group of riders moving fast, kicking up clouds of dust. Their silhouettes were rough, armed, and urgent. Something in their movement told him they were not hunters or townsfolk. They were outlaws, men looking for trouble. "They know you have been here," Nakamis said calmly, though her eyes were sharp. "They do not understand the secret, but they want it for themselves." Greed and ignorance can make men dangerous. Jake swallowed hard. He had never been in a real fight, never faced men so determined to pursue him and someone he barely knew. Yet he felt a strange calmness, as if the desert itself was teaching him courage. "What do we do?" he asked. Nakamis did not answer immediately. Instead, she pointed to the rocks around them. "We use the land, watch, listen, and move with it. The secret is not just what you see and feel, it is how you act. Patience, timing, and understanding are your allies." Jake nodded, trying to steady his fear. He realized that everything Nakamis had taught him, the patience, the observation, the connection with the land, was now going to be tested. He followed her movements closely, noting how she used shadows and terrain, how she positioned herself and even the herbs in ways that seemed protective, almost like a shield. As the outlaws drew closer, Nakamis led Jake down a narrow trail that twisted through the canyon walls. The path was difficult, lined with loose rocks and hidden dips, but she moved with ease. Jake struggled to keep up, realizing that every step required focus, balance, and awareness. The outlaws shouted in the distance, unaware of the narrow paths and sudden drops that could trap them. Finally, they reached a small cave hidden among jagged rocks. Nakamis gestured for Jake to enter. Inside, the cave was cool and dim, but it smelled of herbs and earth. She crouched and began arranging small bundles of plants around the entrance. "These are protective herbs," she whispered. "They will confuse those who seek harm. The land gives us ways to defend ourselves if we know how to listen." Jake watched, fascinated. He realized that the secret was not only about visions or understanding, it was about survival, strategy, and respect for the power of the land. Nakamis handed him a small bundle. "Place this here," she instructed, and he did, following her carefully. The moment the bundle touched the ground, he felt a subtle shift in the energy of the cave, a faint warmth that seemed to spread around them. Outside, the outlaws drew nearer, shouting and spurring their horses. Jake could hear their anger and confusion as they approached the canyon, unaware of the hidden paths and protective measures. Nakamis whispered to him, "Stay quiet, stay patient. They cannot see what you understand. Let them rush where they cannot tread safely." Time seemed to stretch. Jake could hear his own heartbeat, the wind whistling through the canyon, and the faint sounds of the outlaws struggling against the rough terrain. He felt fear, yes, but also a strange clarity. Every lesson Nakamis had taught him, the observation, the patience, the connection to the land, was now a tool he could use to survive. Finally, the outlaws, frustrated and confused, began to turn back, their shouts fading as they realized the canyon was treacherous and unfamiliar. Jake exhaled slowly, relief washing over him. He looked at Nakamis, who had remained calm throughout, her eyes shining with quiet pride. "You see," she said softly, "understanding the land, respecting it, and listening to it, these are parts of the secret. Those who are greedy, careless, or ignorant cannot take it. They may try, but they will fail." Jake nodded, feeling both awe and gratitude. He had not only survived, but he had begun to understand the depth of her teachings. The secret was not just about knowledge, it was about wisdom, courage, and harmony with the world. As the day passed, Nakamis led him back to the spring. She began to teach him more about the plants, showing him how they could heal wounds, soothe pain, and even strengthen the body. Jake followed her instructions carefully, practicing the techniques she demonstrated. He felt a growing confidence, a deeper connection to the land, and a sense that he was becoming part of something greater than himself. At one point, she stopped and placed her hand on his shoulder. "You have learned patience, observation, and courage today. But there is more to the secret than survival. There is trust, trust in yourself, trust in the land, and trust in those who share knowledge with you. Without trust, understanding cannot grow." Jake felt the weight of her words. He realized that he had been learning not only about the desert and the herbs, but also about himself, his fears, his strengths, and his ability to face challenges he never imagined. He felt a deep respect for Nakamis, for her wisdom, and for the delicate balance between sharing knowledge and protecting it. As evening fell, the canyon glowed with soft amber light. Jake and Nakamis sat by the spring, watching the water ripple and shimmer. The wind carried the faint scent of herbs and distant flowers, and the sounds of the desert at dusk surrounded them. Jake felt a mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. He had faced danger, learned valuable lessons, and glimpsed deeper layers of the secret Nakamis had shared. Nakamis spoke softly, breaking the comfortable silence. "Tomorrow, the secret will deepen further. You have proven yourself patient, observant, and courageous. But there are still challenges ahead, visions to understand, responsibilities to accept, and choices to make. The desert teaches those who are willing, but it also tests those who are ready." Jake nodded, feeling both excitement and apprehension. He realized that the journey was far from over. The secret was still unfolding, and the connection he had begun to feel with the land and Nakamis was growing stronger each day. He understood that knowledge alone was not enough. The true secret required wisdom, courage, and the ability to act with respect and integrity. That night, as he lay beneath the stars, Jake reflected on the day. He thought of the outlaws, the hidden paths, and the protective herbs. He realized that the desert had not only taught him survival, but also the importance of patience, trust, and respect for the power of the world around him. He knew that Nakamis' secret was far greater than he had imagined, and that the lessons he had learned would stay with him forever. In the quiet of the night, he heard the wind whisper through the canyon, carrying the faint, steady voice of Nakamis. "Tomorrow, you will see more. You will understand more, and you will be tested again in ways you cannot yet imagine, but you are ready." Jake closed his eyes, feeling a sense of peace and purpose. The desert had become more than a place. It was a teacher, a guardian, and a guide. Nakamis had become more than a mysterious woman. She was a mentor, a protector, and a keeper of knowledge. And he understood in the deepest part of his heart that the secret was not just hers to hold, or his to learn, but a living connection between the past, the present, and the future, waiting for those who were willing to truly understand it. The next morning, the canyon glowed in soft golden light, the kind that made the red rocks shine like fire. Jake Miller rode back to the hidden spring with a quiet determination. He had faced danger, learned the ways of the land, and glimpsed Nakamis' secret, but he knew that today would bring the deepest lessons yet. Every heartbeat seemed to echo with the desert's rhythm, every breath filled with anticipation and respect. He was no longer merely curious, he was ready to understand the secret fully. Nakamis was waiting, standing tall by the spring. Her dark hair framed her face, and her eyes held the calm intensity that had fascinated him since their first meeting. She studied him silently, then nodded. "You are ready," she said softly. "But remember, understanding comes not only from seeing, touching, or learning. It comes from feeling, from carrying what you know responsibly, and from respecting all life. Are you ready for the truth?" Jake took a deep breath and nodded. "I am ready," he said, though a small part of him still trembled with uncertainty. She motioned for him to sit near the spring, the cool water reflecting the sunlight. Nakamis reached for a small bundle of herbs and placed it gently in front of him. These herbs, these plants, are more than their shapes, colors, or scents. They are the memory of life itself. Touch them, listen, and feel. Do not rush. Let the knowledge flow to you. Jake placed his hands carefully on the bundle, feeling the textures of the leaves, the warmth of the sun, and the moisture from the spring. Almost immediately, the visions returned, stronger than ever before. This time, they were not just flashes, they were streams of life. He saw the land as it had been centuries ago, with families living, hunting, and gathering. He felt the emotions of the people, their joy, their sorrow, their love, and their hardships. He felt the wind that had carried their laughter, the rivers that had nourished them, and the sun that had warmed their faces. When he opened his eyes, Nakamis was watching him, calm and steady. "You are beginning to understand," she said. "The secret is not only knowledge. It is connection. It is seeing life as a whole, as a web where every action, every choice has meaning. You feel the past, the present, and the future. This is why touch, observation, and respect are important. You cannot take lightly what you now carry within you." Jake nodded slowly, feeling a deep sense of awe. He understood now that the secret was not a single thing. It was a living understanding of life, of the land, and of people. It was empathy, responsibility, and respect intertwined. The visions had shown him the strength and vulnerability of those who had come before, and he knew he must honor it. Nakamis gestured for him to follow her to the edge of the spring. There she taught him the final lessons, the ways to use the knowledge he had gained, not for selfish gain, but to protect, to heal, and to understand the world more fully. She showed him how the plants could be used for medicine, for comfort, and for strengthening the body and spirit. She explained the importance of teaching only those who were ready, and of keeping the land safe from those who would exploit it. Hours passed, and the sun climbed high, then began its slow descent. The desert was alive around them, the sound of the wind, the distant calls of birds, the rustle of small creatures moving in the brush. Jake realized that everything Nakamis had taught him was connected, not only to survival but to life itself. He understood that the secret was a gift, a responsibility, and a connection to all living things. Finally, Nakamis placed her hand lightly on his shoulder. "You have learned much," she said. "You understand patience, courage, observation, and connection. You have faced danger, respected the land, and opened your heart to life itself. But the final part of the secret is this. It is not only knowledge, it is wisdom. Wisdom is knowing what to do with what you have learned, and how to carry it forward without harming what is fragile or sacred." Jake felt a deep sense of peace. He realized that the secret was now a part of him, not something distant or hidden, but something he could feel and act upon. He looked at Nakamis, gratitude and respect filling his heart. "Thank you," he said softly, "for everything. For trusting me, for teaching me, for sharing this with me." Nakamis smiled faintly. "The land, the secret, and the knowledge belong to all who respect it. You did not take it, you earned it. That is why it is safe in your hands." As the sun dipped lower, painting the canyon walls in brilliant orange and purple, Jake realized that his time with Nakamis was coming to an end. He had learned, he had grown, and he had begun to understand a world far larger than the one he had known. Yet part of him wished he could stay longer to continue learning, to remain in this sacred place. Nakamis seemed to sense his thoughts. "You must return to your world," she said gently, "but you will carry the secret with you. It will guide you, protect you, and remind you of the lessons you have learned. And one day, when the time is right, you may return and continue the journey." Jake nodded, feeling both sadness and acceptance. He had come seeking a secret, and he had found something far greater, a connection to life, to the land, and to a wisdom that had been preserved for generations. He mounted his horse slowly, glancing back one last time at the spring and at Nokomis. She stood tall, her figure framed by the canyon, calm and strong as ever. "Remember," she whispered, her voice carried by the wind, "knowledge is only powerful when it is used wisely. Protect it, respect it, and never take it lightly." Jake felt the weight of her words, and he nodded silently. As he rode away, the canyon seemed to watch him, the wind carrying the faint scent of sage and herbs and the quiet rustle of life around him. He understood now that Nokomis' secret was not something to possess. It was something to live, something to honor, and something to carry forward with care. The ride back to town was quiet. Jake reflected on everything he had experienced, the visions, the lessons, the danger, and the connection to the desert and Nokomis. He realized that he had changed. He was no longer just a cowboy riding through the desert. He was someone who understood the land, respected its history, and carried within him a wisdom that could guide his life and protect others. That evening, as he set up camp beneath the stars, he thought again of Nokomis. He remembered her eyes, her words, and the feeling of connection he had felt when touching the herbs and the land. He realized that the secret was now a part of him, shaping the way he saw the world, the people around him, and the choices he would make in the future. Sleep came slowly, filled with visions of the canyon, the spring, and the people who had lived there long before him. He saw their lives intertwined with the land, and he understood that he was now part of that web, carrying forward the lessons he had learned with Nokomis. Somewhere in the canyon, Nokomis gathered her herbs one last time for the day. She watched the fading light, knowing that the secret was safe in the hands of someone who had earned it. She whispered softly to the wind, a message meant for no one but the desert itself. "The secret lives on in those who respect it, who listen, who feel, and who act with wisdom. It is not lost. It is not forgotten. It is shared with those who are ready." Jake lay beneath the stars, feeling a deep peace. He knew that his life had been forever changed by the woman, the desert, and the secret she had shared. He was ready to return to the world, carrying the knowledge, the visions, and the wisdom within him. And somewhere in the whispering wind, he could still hear her voice, reminding him of the power of patience, courage, and respect. The desert had taught him its greatest lesson, that secrets are not always hidden to be taken. They are revealed to those who are ready, who are willing to listen, and who are willing to honor them. Jake knew that he would carry this lesson for the rest of his life, and that Nokomis' secret would guide him, protect him, and inspire him in all that he did. As the stars shone above, the canyon quiet and eternal, Jake closed his eyes, filled with gratitude, understanding, and a sense of wonder. The journey had ended, but the secret lived on, not only in the desert, but in him.